up, guys? It's Drew, addict, alcoholic, substance use disorder, 5 years clean and sober, off mainly alcohol, marijuana, Xanax, meth, heroin, pills, you name it. Basically, the whole gamut. I've done, I've tried, I've abused, and I've swore that I would never use again. And within typically hours, I am doing the very thing I just swore I would never touch again. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit. And first of all, I want to say, if you're coming on the channel, thanks for checking it out, man. I've recently been trying to kind of get my YouTube going. I used to post all my episodes to Spotify, and I realize now YouTube is the future for podcasts and content. And so I've been working on that. I've noticed, though, my views on YouTube, I do not get picked up on the algorithm. So I've been testing some new stuff out, trying some new videos, talking about some different stuff. But I love talking about addiction, recovery, sobriety, changing our life, changing our mindset, spreading hope, and just finding a way to conquer a lot of the things that typically were crippling us in our life, whether that was making our mental health go down, whether that was giving us legal issues, whether it was causing strain on our relationships, whatever the case. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about meth. What are the signs of meth? What is the addiction like with meth? Now, it's interesting, though, because it really depends on how much you're using, how long you've been using, and your method of transportation for using. And what I mean by that is there's a big difference between someone who drops a little crystal of meth into their coffee in the morning and goes off to work versus someone who is in stage 5, slamming meth, running into psychosis, hearing stuff, seeing stuff, having these delusions and paranoia and things that they think is going on. I know for me in the beginning, the signs that I was on meth is I've always been a skinnier guy, but I started to lose a lot of weight on meth. I wasn't very hungry, especially in the beginning. And one of the worst things about meth, I think, and I would argue it's one of the things that causes the most damage to us mentally and physically, is the fact that we don't sleep. Like, we are built to sleep. We're like an iPhone that needs to be plugged into the wall at night and recharged for all the apps and everything that we have going on during the day. It's very problematic when you're not getting sleep. Now, the thing about meth, and I've talking to a lot of women that have experienced this while on the podcast. A lot of times, the first year of using meth, people really like it because, number one, you're getting crazy amounts of energy. You feel like you can get more stuff done. You just have energy to do it all. But also is weight loss. And if you look at someone typically after they've started meth, let's say maybe they were a little bit overweight when they started, they look pretty good after a few months because the drug hasn't fully taken over yet. It hasn't, maybe it's not keeping them awake for weeks at a time yet. And they lose weight and people say, man, what are you doing? You're losing weight. And I think it gives a lot of us this confidence of, oh, I'm looking better. But I've noticed with meth that there's also a very quick drop-off point where you go from maybe losing a little bit of weight and maybe people think you're looking better to just bam, falling off the edge. So that's one sign, is a lot of times is the weight loss. Now, I also notice with me, I feel like meth changed my personality more drastically than some of the other substances. And what I mean by that is I've never really been a super angry person, but I noticed that on meth, I was angry. I was pissed off. A lot of the other signs too is because the thing is it's not like alcohol where you can just say, hey, look, this is what I'm doing. I'm drinking on the weekends. It's not socially accepted. When you tell people you're doing those harder drugs, you're going to get a bad reaction. Obviously, no one wants to hear that. It's shocking. It's weird. People don't understand it. So I think a lot of times what comes with that part of addiction is the having to lie about it constantly. And people start to notice, they're like, man, you're looking tired and you're all over the place. I think, though, it is very obvious a lot of times when people are high on meth. They're all over the place. I don't know if you've ever seen people that are moving their arms and tapping their legs and talking a million miles an hour. And you can just tell. Most people can look at you and say, oh, something's going on here. But it's also very tricky because I've seen people where you almost can't even notice it. Maybe they've been doing it for a long time. Maybe they have a tolerance. Maybe they're not injecting it, or maybe they're not even staying awake all night. They're just so used to it that they're able to eat on it and sleep. So I think it does vary. I know for me, towards the end, I started to run into things like psychosis. I had heard about psychosis. I didn't understand what it was. I had heard about people kind of getting paranoid and seeing things or hearing things. I started to experience that at the end. I remember walking around and I was homeless and I was doing really bad and my life was pretty much burnt to the ground and I didn't really have anywhere to stay. So, and my main thing was opiates, but because I had nowhere to stay and I was running around, I would just use meth to stay awake so that I didn't have to sleep somewhere. I didn't have to sleep on the ground. I just continued to stay awake. And the problem was I started to inject it as well. So what was happening is I had been awake for a fairly long period of time, which for me was a week, 2 weeks. And I was starting to hear stuff, and I was starting to think that people were kind of out to get me. And I was looking around, and I thought that everyone was an undercover cop, and they're trying to catch me. And I remember telling people about this while it was going on, and one of my friends sitting me down and saying, dude, you're running around homeless, man. You have maybe $20, $40 worth of that drug in your pocket. They find people with that stuff every single day. They bust people with big amounts of that stuff. Do you really think there is this big undercover operation trying to get you, a personal user, that's getting high? Like, there's probably 1 million people running around homeless right now that are using this drug, but you assume that they're using all of these resources and time and people and money and overtime hours to catch you with a personal amount of meth? Like, do you think that's really feasible? And I remember sitting there, it makes a lot of sense looking back now. That should have snapped me out of it. I didn't believe it. I thought that they were out to get me, right? And I remember texting people, and it was a scary thing, though. I'll say that, because the psychosis, I had never got it, never experienced it before until this period of time. And I think it's because I was using needles and because I had stayed up so long. But basically what was happening, because I had nowhere to crash, I just continued to do a shot of it each day. And it wasn't necessarily getting me that high anymore because I had been awake so long. But what it was doing is it was just keeping me awake for another day. And so I did that for, I don't even know how many days. And I assume that maybe I sat down somewhere and like napped or kind of crashed out for a little bit, but I was up for a while. And I was really hearing a lot. I remember walking by bars and I'd hear music in there and I'd hear people talking. And I was literally hearing people talking about me as I walked by. And I've seen people that are like this, that are experiencing psychosis, that are running around the streets today as I'm sober and I'm driving to work or driving through LA. I see this. And you'll see it because they'll be walking and they're completely talking to themselves. Sometimes they'll kind of point at you and yell at you. And I don't know, I'm sure some cases it's just mental health related. Maybe people aren't on their meds, but I'm sure a lot of it is probably drug related as well. And I had never experienced a psychosis until this period of my life. I had heard about it. I had heard that sometimes people end up abusing meth and they end up in psych wards and the psychosis kind of doesn't go away. And so I was really freaking out, and I thought that there was people trying to bust me, but they were never showing up. Sometimes I would walk outside and I'd hear someone calling the cops on the phone. Like, no one's around me. No one's on the phone. It never occurred to me, how would I hear that in my mind? How would I hear people calling the cops, right? And I would literally hear them on the radio, like 10-4, like we're going to get the white male who's using meth, and I'd run away and go hide somewhere, and I'd sit there for an hour or two, and next thing you know, I look around, and it never occurred to me. every time I was running away from all this stuff and paranoid and thought that the cops were coming after me, they never showed up. Never occurred to me. And what would happen is I'd be hiding somewhere and it'd kind of wear off. And then I'd go, oh, dude, that was so stupid. I'm tripping. I'm starting to lose my mind. What am I doing? And you'd think at that point that I would say, I need to get some sleep. And everyone in my life was telling me that. And that's kind of another sign that you know that it's becoming a serious problem with you. And it's the most annoying thing in the world to hear when you're experiencing it. Because it's basically people nicely saying, dude, you're off your rocker. Like, you're gone. And we know. I know you're trying to hide it and trying to act like everything's cool. We know you need sleep. That used to bother me so much. But during this time period when I started to feel the psychosis, it actually started to get quite scary because you'd think that people are just so out to get you, and you think all this stuff is going on, and I'm continuing to get high. And I'll tell you what scared me. At this point, I finally ended. The psychosis ended because I ended up getting arrested. But the scary part was I was in there for a few weeks and I was still kind of hearing stuff for the first few days. And I hadn't gotten high in days. And that kind of worried me. And I remember talking to a guy in rehab years later, a psychiatrist. And I told him about this. And he goes, man, you're lucky, dude. A lot of people that get to that point and experience it that bad to the point where they stop and it still kind of goes on for a little bit. Some people get stuck like that. And he said, you would not believe the amount of people that are in psych wards today that have drug-induced schizophrenia from meth. And the thing was, once I experienced psychosis for the first time, I noticed that every time I would get high after, like, it was a lot easier for me to go back into psychosis, if that makes sense. Like, it took years of using to finally get it for the first time. But once I had it for the first time, it would come on a lot quicker. And there was times where I would get, this is the insanity of, and this is why I kind of bring all this up. This is the insanity of addiction. And I'm kind of telling my psychosis story and to kind of get at that as well. But it's insane because I would be scared experiencing all this stuff and I would want it to stop and I would want things to chill out. And then I would finally get some sleep. And sometimes I would crash somewhere. It depends on the availability. If friends would let me come over and crash, depends what was going on. But there were times where I would sleep for 1 to almost 3 days, just depending on how long I had been awake and how hard I had been going. But I would wake up and finally have a little bit of peace to where I wasn't hearing stuff and thinking all this crazy shit, really. And then I would go right back to it. Just went through this whole nightmare of hearing stuff, seeing stuff, being paranoid, running away from cops that were not there, having to lie to people about all this different stuff. And then I finally get some sleep. Things kind of calm down a little bit. And then I would go right back to it. Right back to the drug that is literally making me lose my mind. And then within a couple hours, I'm hearing stuff again. But that's addiction for you. It's insane. See, if I were to tell someone, anyone who's listening right now, if you've been through addiction, you understand. If I were to tell this to someone that hadn't been through it, they'd say, or if they were even just witnessing this behavior, they'd say, dude, you're absolutely nuts. How can you continue to reach for this thing that is making you mentally crazy? You look like shit physically. I know you feel like shit. You're tripping out in your head. Like, how do you justify this? And the thing is I didn't know how to justify it, but it's addiction. It's look, I know this is going to be bad. I know my experience with this drug has been absolutely terrible lately, but I don't want to get sober right now. Or I don't know if it's I didn't want to, or I didn't think I could. I didn't think it was possible. I didn't think it was worth it. I had done too much damage. There was too many things I'd have to focus on and rebuild my life if I did get sober. So I just continued to use. But I continued to reach for the thing that was ultimately robbing me of any serenity, any peace of mind, any comfortability, any feelings of just being okay. But meth addiction's weird because you'll talk to people that have never experienced psychosis, never had it, never tripped out like that, don't understand it. It's kind of one of those things that you only understand if you felt it before, but some people don't go into it. Some people don't end up using needles. They just end up smoking or snorting a little bit. So I think it's different for everyone, but I think the main signs that someone is using meth a lot of times is you'll see the periods of anger. You'll see a huge shift in personality. People stop showing up, start lying about everything, not capable of really keeping their word. A lot of times there's theft involved with it to fuel it. You'll notice lack of sleep, lack of motivation, lack of care. They'll a lot of times change their friends groups. Their hours will completely change. You may see them up for days at a time. You may see them up all night. A lot of times you'll see a crash out period, which will last depending on, for me, it was always 1 to 3 days where I would literally sleep sometimes for 3 days straight just to wake up, pee, grab food, grab water. And the hunger after coming off that stuff, because a lot of us don't eat on it. Some people do. It really depends. But meth addiction is brutal, and I want to talk a little bit about recovering from it. I noticed, I guess the best way to put this, when I got off of opiates, I noticed that I was depressed for a long time. It took a while to find some motivation, to feel better. Now with meth, I noticed recovering from it, it messed with me more mentally and emotionally than I think a lot of other substances. And I think it's because I had gone into the psychosis and things had gotten so bad. But I noticed my emotions were all over the place. I noticed that when I got sober, I was so quick to get angry. And I would have kind of these emotional bouts where I just would so flustered and pissed off and feeling, oh man, and would have a hard time focusing. And the hard part too, coming off of that stuff, is because it gives you so much energy when you're on it. A lot of times when you're coming off of it, you're just so depleted and so tired and so unmotivated. You don't really feel like doing much. And another thing about it too is it affects our dopamine so much. It's not like alcohol. It's like, I don't even know how many times or how many times it multiplies dopamine versus alcohol, or how much more dopamine it puts into the brain compared to alcohol. But it's such a stimulating thing when you're using it. So I found that getting off of it, there was not a lot that I enjoyed for a while. I really had to adopt the idea that, look, I need to change my life, but I need to have routine in place. There needs to be things that I do on a daily, weekly basis to just feel okay for today and get by, and know that I may not have a lot of motivation to be doing these things for a few months. And I just need to do the best I can do. I just need to make sure that I try and get some good sleep. Everything contrary to what was going on in addiction when I was using this stuff, I need to try to do. Which means I need to try and show up for things. I need to make sure that I have friends, people that I can talk to. I need to make sure that I get sleep at night. I need to make sure that I try and eat healthy, or somewhat healthy, or at least eat, right? Because that's the contrary action of what I was doing on that stuff in addiction. I need to have some type of support. I need to have people that I can call. And another thing that worked great for me was exercise. I felt, I would just walk out of the gym and I felt just okay. I didn't feel amazing. It was nothing like the dopamine rush of doing meth, but it was enough dopamine kind of flowing that I just felt a little bit better as I walked out of there. So I think that some type of exercise is a mandatory coming off of this stuff. And a lot of times I just had to change my habits as well. I was trying not to stay up super late like I did on that stuff. I really had to get away from the people that were using it. It's a hard drug to say no to when you get sober. Not that any of the other ones aren't, but for whatever reason, it just calls you. When you still have those old friends that are doing it, and you've been sober for a little bit, and they message you on social media and say, dude, I just got a bag of meth. There's something about that scene. I don't know if it's because it has to be so secretive because it's hard drugs. I don't know if it's the excitement because it's such a rush to do it, and it's kind of secretive, and you kind of it's almost like this underworld where you only know a certain amount of people that are using it, but it calls you. It's a hard one. People always say, look, meth doesn't have a hold on you like heroin does. Not physically, not as much physically, but I think that mentally it can. It's a hard one to stay away from for whatever reason. I think part of that is because you feel so much excitement while doing it, and then the opposite of that when you get sober is you just feel so down, and not much excites you, not much is fun. And so it's almost, you get to a point where you say, dude, I feel so bored doing this sobriety stuff. I feel so bored doing this. There's just nothing going on. There's no action. It's nothing like this old life I was living. And although that was terrible and I was starting to lose my mind mentally, this sobriety stuff is rough. But I find that if we give ourselves enough time, enough grace to kind of heal, enough patience with ourselves, that look, we're not going to feel amazing right away in early sobriety. Some people feel good right away. I definitely didn't. But we just need to continue to do whatever we can, whatever that is for you, whatever your kind of recovery program is going to be. And we just need to stick to it day by day. And I urge anyone coming off of the meth to get into exercise, or at least find other ways to get the dopamine going, listening to music, getting in the sun, eating healthy. Find ways to just feel a little bit better so you can make it through that day, and also trust the process. Know that it's going to get better. I was bored as hell in early sobriety. I never thought I was going to enjoy anything ever again. Never thought I'd be happy again. Never thought I would laugh. Never thought I would enjoy sobriety. And that hasn't been the case. So thank you to anyone that listened, anyone that checked out this channel for the first time. Again, I've been sober 5 years. I love to come on and just talk about addiction and recovery. And I'm in the process. I'm learning every day. The longer I've been sober, the more I realize there's different levels to unlock. And the more I realize that I don't know anything. Like, I'm just continuing to be a sponge and to learn more, and I get the opportunity to talk to a lot of people that are sober on the podcast, and it's a lot of fun. So thanks for checking it out, guys. Leave a comment sometime. Follow if you liked what you hear. Check out some of the episodes, and let me know your sobriety date. Let me know if you came off of meth and what early sobriety was like coming off of it. How long did it take you to feel better? How was the detox? Did you ever have psychosis from meth? What helps you stay off of it today? Or are you someone out there struggling? Are you having a hard time getting off of it? Have you tried multiple rehabs and detoxes and treatment centers like I have? Where are you struggling? Where do you think you need to improve? I'd love to hear from you guys. That's my point. I would love to hear from it, whether it's your sobriety date or the things you're struggling with. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.